Simply renouncing your faith is not enough. You have to turn in your friends. You have to completely sell your soul to the regime in order to survive.
Today I sit down with Peabody Award-winning filmmaker Leon Li. In his new feature film, Unsilenced, he tells the story of a group of students who risked their lives to expose brutal persecution in China.
The entire nation is mobilized in the crackdown against Falun Gong.
Like most things critical of the Chinese regime, forces were at work trying to make this film disappear.
Several senior cast members, even after signing a deal memo, they would back off, sometimes only days before production would start.
This is American Thought Leaders, and I'm Yanya Kelly. Leon Li, such a pleasure to have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you for having me here.
Leon, I just recently watched your new film, Unsilenced. And first of all, the title, Unsilenced. I mean, this is something that not only people in China, where the film is based, people all over the world are thinking about this topic, censorship, silencing, being able to say their piece in the public square. Tell us, what is this Unsilenced all about?
Unsilenced is based on true events about how an American reporter and a team of innocent students in China come together to expose one of the largest human rights atrocities in China.
More than 10,000 Falun Gong practitioners protested peacefully in Beijing, China.
Protesters gathered on the streets outside the Chinese Communist Party headquarters.
It amounts to the largest demonstration since the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989.
法轮功教人向善，练的人不是越多越好吗？
这是个可遇不可求的机会，好好把握。
认定法轮功组织为非法组织，予以取缔。
你还练不练？你是辅导员，更应该相信组织。
可这上面全是假的啊！
你为什么要杀你的父母？
法轮功从法轮功里面学来的，从死刑减到15年，他马上就老实了。
干得不错。
为了人民的安宁，家庭的安宁，
你们可别乱来呀！
你怎么也相信啊？
咱们得把真相告诉人们。
站住 ！Okay, no, I'm a reporter with Chicago Post.
You begged me to get you back there, whatever it took.
I cannot sit by and watch them be manipulated
into turning against each other.
就是这一家。
快点！
The government is conducting one of the largest scale propaganda campaigns in history. You just want to ignore it.
What are you going to do? Walk into the prison and demand to see him?
Get out of China. Expose their lies to the world.
I can't remember somehow the last time I saw a film come out of Hollywood that was in any way critical of the Chinese regime.
Well, the last time is perhaps 1997, when actually we had the 3 films coming out from Hollywood being remotely critical of the Chinese regime. They talked about the human rights issues in Tibet and so on and so forth. But after that, Hollywood seemed to have learned a big lesson in order to get into the Chinese market, which last year, I believe, officially surpassed the United States in terms of box office to be the largest in the world. They are no longer able to produce anything that tells the truth about China. And not only that, I believe there was a trend to actively please the censors in Beijing in order to get into the market.
Your film really made me think a lot. You know, frankly, not just about China, but about the world in general, and frankly, how unlikely heroes are made. Tell me a little bit more about how you found these stories.
While making my last documentary, I had an opportunity to meet Wang, who turned out to be the protagonist in the film, in the United States. He had just escaped from China after spending 8 years in prison. And all his crime was basically exposing the persecution through very peaceful means. And he was a PhD candidate in China's MIT, the prestigious Tsinghua University. He had a bright future, of course. But then in 1999, the government in China started cracking down on Falun Gong, and he had been practicing for some time then. So overnight, he turned from the bright star in an elite university to the enemy of the state. He was expelled from school, but he did not give up. He and his friends started this grassroots movement to disseminate information countering state propaganda. The story is based on his own experience, as well as experiences from other practitioners of Falun Gong and Western reporters.
Well, first of all, I want to talk about Wang, because Wang has a professor in the film, and I really love that character in the film. This professor is troubled by the fact that I think he lost his son in the Tiananmen Square massacre in 1989. And he sees what's happening, and he's afraid that the same will happen to his protege.
Absolutely. Like an entire generation of Chinese, their ideals, their dreams, their courage were crushed by the massacre in 1989. Many people completely lost hope. And for them to be able to survive, that's their priority. There is no longer any pursuit of any ideals. And his professor, as we mentioned, lost his son in 1989. And Wang, he considered Wang his second son. Everything he learned in his life was that do not go against the party. This is the one thing you do not want to do. And he's trying his best to convince Wang to give up, to renounce his beliefs. But Wang, of course, believed that his belief is right, that everything the government was trying to say about Falun Gong was false, was complete propaganda. And he believed the importance of telling the truth. So there was an interesting dynamic between the professor and Wang.
You know, I just have to comment here, you know, Leon, the first film that I saw of yours was Human Harvest. And it was one of your very early films. I mean, and talking about an issue that you're not allowed to talk about. This was one of the really big exposés of the whole murder for organs industry in China. And I know you experienced a lot of difficulties in actually having this film made and distributed, and eventually ended up winning a Peabody Award for this. But maybe just briefly, if we're going to talk about, you know, being unsilenced about important issues, tell me a little bit about that.
Yes, Human Harvest was an expose about the illegal organ trade in China. It turned out the Chinese regime had been harvesting vital organs from Falun Gong practitioners, Uyghurs, Tibetans, political dissidents in the hundreds of thousands. Of course, this is to fuel the booming transplant industry in China. In the beginning, most of the recipients are wealthy Western patients. After the expose, they turned to domestic market. You know, domestic patients are mainly the recipients of those organs now. Many organizations have been working on this issue, trying to pressure the Chinese regime to stop using organs from death row inmates and from other political dissidents. Although China made a promise to do so, unfortunately, the practice hasn't really stopped.
So when it comes to this reporter character, the Western reporter who has just made it back into the good graces of the Chinese Communist Party after having reported on Tiananmen Square massacre 10 years before, he's now looking around, trying to figure out what's going on. And he's calling back to his editor, and an editor's saying, whoa, 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 what do you want to report on? Listen, let's report on nice, friendly things. So this sounds a common theme these days, but is this what was happening back then too?
Yes, the Chinese regime had various ways to censor, control, or influence foreign reporters in China. And it's been well documented by organizations such as Reporters Without Borders. And in Unsilenced, our reporter is a composite character. I did interview many reporters who stationed in China, and I was able to incorporate some of their experiences into this character. For many reporters, dealing with the interference and censorship is a daily reality. Sometimes they were only given, for example, 3 months visa or 6 months of visa. And depending on what articles they write during this period of time, their visa may or may not be extended. Now, for some reporters, it might be okay. They come back to the States, they get assigned to a different beat, that's fine. But for some people, China is their specialty. They've been studying Chinese since college. This is what they do. And for a Chinese expert, for a scholar, academia, or a reporter, if they lose access to China, they sort of lose access to everything. And that's why, for many of them, to be able to report the truth, it's a constant struggle.